Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to First Cut. This is our weekly show. This week, we have a very special guest, the co-founder of Latinx Lens. We have Rosa Parra in the house. Rosa, how are you feeling today?
Yes. Oh my God, I'm feeling excited. Like Selena says in the movie, right? Me siento muy excited.
Yeah, that's
To
amazing.
be here, especially because I'm a big fan of the both of you. So, um, sincerely, I'm humbled and honored to be sharing this with you guys. So, thank you for the invite.
Yeah, and thank you for being here. Obviously, we're also here with RB3. RB3 is in the house to break down some of the topics that we have today. The first thing I want to get to is kind of where we're at in film. And I know this is a topic that RB3 and I talk about a lot. We kind of make it a running joke on our show because it's like, where are movies at nowadays? But it's a genuine question that I have. We're coming off of Creed 3's massive weekend. RB3 and I wanted to do a video on it anyways. So let's kind of talk about, how do we feel about where movie going is at, theaters, streaming, all that kind of stuff? How do you feel about movies nowadays, Rosa?
Yes, I was watching another channel where they were laying out the releases for this month, for the month of March, and I was excited for every weekend that was gonna be coming up. Because you have a variety of things. Of course, you have Creed 3, but you also have like John Wick 4 coming out. You have Shazam. You have just a variety of films coming out. So I feel that it's a exciting and great time to be a movie fan, especially if you like going to the movie theaters. And I feel that we're slowly but surely, I think there's still a few things that need to get worked out, but more surely but surely, I think we're heading back to what's the new normal now. After COVID certainly shook us, but seeing the success of Top Gun Maverick and seeing what Avatar, the Shape of Water is doing, the Shape of Water, we're here mixing two movies now. Avatar, The Way of Water. There we go. What they're doing at the box office. I think that within itself speaks volumes of how the movie theater financial things is going on. So I feel that we're heading into the right direction. I'm very excited to be a movie fan right now.
Yeah, absolutely. RB3, how are you feeling about movies right now, man?
Yeah, I actually 100% agree with Rosa. I think we're headed back to theatrical releases, headed back to theaters. The pandemic definitely took a big wind out of that because, we had the obviously shutdowns. We couldn't go to theaters, but then after the shutdowns were over, we still had a lot of day and date releases. We still had HBO Max doing the day and date, even with big movies like Godzilla versus King Kong. At least early, 2021. And then as 2022 opened up and things started to, be more outside. And I should say before 2022, the end of 2021, beginning of 2022 was Spider-Man No Way Home, right? Which was like the first massive juggernaut post-pandemic. So Spider-Man No Way Home, followed up, like you said, Rosa, Top Gun Maverick, Avatar 2. And now it's almost like a regular place where we're going to start seeing massive blockbusters week to week. And I think that's largely because during the pandemic, during that 2020, 2021 shutdown, all those theatrical movies ended up getting pushed until 2022, 2023. And, I think the lesser ones maybe came out already last year, the ones that were kind of like, but now we're actually getting to the super exciting stuff like John Wick 4. That's for me personally. We already got We've already got Creed 3, which was one of my most anticipated films of the year. We got that up top. It's not even to mention even on the animated Pixar side. Like, to me personally, Elemental's the new film that they got is a lot more exciting than Lightyear, right? So it's like there's a lot of opportunities to reinvigorate the theatrical experience. And plus, I think a lot of people might be annoyed by this, but I think it's nice. The more premium formats, the more 3Ds, the more IMAXs. Obviously, Way of Water brought back 3D. Now we have Scream 6 coming out this week that's also being released in 3D. So it's like, things are kind of coming back. Creed 3 specifically shot for IMAX, which I personally think they missed out on the prime opportunity to do Creed 3D, Creed 3D, like the but that they didn't go that route. But yeah, the IMAX, which accounted for, I think, if I'm not mistaken, almost like 30% of the box office for Creed 3 this past weekend. So more premium formats, more things. They just got the one thing that's negative: no more charging for tickets for the different seats. Like, let's not do that, AMC. That's crazy. But
yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. We'll briefly hit on it because I feel like it's such a significant thing that's going on with AMC theaters. But let's kind of focus on Creed 3 a little bit, just because I want to talk about that box office weekend, 58 million. I feel like the projected was like 40. So it definitely surpassed the projected weekend box office with 58, 100 million globally, which includes the domestic that it currently got, which was that 58 million. That's massive. It's the biggest in any of the Rocky movies, biggest than any of the Rocky franchise. And if I'm being honest, I feel like it's the biggest significant one that we've seen in a minute. And I might be like reaching, but I feel like every other thing you named, whether it's Way of Water, whether it's Top Gun Maverick, or whether it's No Way Home, have all been massive IPs that got a lot of attention, whether it's a superhero movie or an anticipated sequel to a massive film like Avatar. But I feel like the significant factor of Creed, several things. Michael B. Jordan director, Black director, first time Black director, biggest box office opening for that. The variety that we got when it comes to the moviegoers, which is a higher rate of African-American, Latino, a bigger, wider range. I thought that was significant. And the idea of 3 Black leads being in one of the biggest movies, not just domestically, but globally, I thought was very significant.
Without Rocky, no Rocky too.
And no Rocky, there you go. So I feel like this is such a significant way, in a way that Top Gun Maverick wasn't. Like, Top Gun Maverick to me is just still Tom Cruise, and it's still Tom Cruise doing Tom Cruise and being the star of a show. But this one was very much like, it's all about Creed, and it's all about Michael B. Jordan's character and this new character that was created specifically for this film, and not the son of Clubber Lang or something like that. This was a specific thing for that film. So I feel like this means a lot, and it makes me hopeful for John Wick, and it makes me hopeful for theater attendance in the future. Do you think this might be the breaking point, Rosa, that we're going to see bigger box office returns instead of just being content with something smaller, or bigger box office, like more people going to the movies, I guess?
Yeah, I think so. And you definitely, the point was initially brought up that yes, the movies like Top Gun Maverick and The Way of Water, they open just regular. It's just the longevity. They've been in the theaters for much longer. Yes, do they have the rewatchability factor, which obviously helps them a lot, and it's boosting their box office numbers. So in that sense, I can see a lot of films doing or following those same footsteps, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, I'm just excited that of all the movies that are going to be coming out. And I know there's been this pushback, or perhaps a not well received approach to, oh yeah, well, all we're watching are just superhero movies, or these are sequels, or they're spin-offs of already existing properties. But I think that's what makes them more I genuinely think that that has a lot to do with why the box office is why they're receiving the box office that they are, because they do have the nostalgia factor, and they do have a certain, either an actor or a storyline or something that you want to go back to. And I think that helps a lot too. Then, we're talking about Creed, and sadly I haven't seen it. I feel ashamed. Not yet, but it's on my to-do list, and I'm excited to see it, because, to be quite frank with you, because of Jonathan Majors, to be quite honest, I saw him a couple of weeks ago in Magazine Dreams at Sundance, and that blew my mind. And after seeing him in Ant-Man, which in my humble opinion, he's the only salvageable thing in that movie. I am just blown away by what he's doing right now, and he's gonna have a spectacular year, and I can't wait to see what he does. I can't even imagine. I don't even know what he does in Creed 3, but I'm so excited to go check it out.
Can we touch on that a little bit, Rosa? Magazine Dreams, because RB3 and I were talking
Yeah.
about it beforehand, because obviously we both haven't seen it, but
Yeah.
we're both very highly anticipated on it, I guess. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think it just got acquired by Searchlight. So it's gonna be getting released later this year. And it makes me excited because I can't wait to see it again. That performance that Jonathan Majors gives, easily the best performance I saw at Sundance. And I saw approximately 50 something films.
Wow.
So and his performance is the one that stood out to me. It's like the only way I can describe it, and I think it's perhaps the most accurate way, is you have the Joker but on steroids. And it's literally because he's the character uses steroids here, but also
Literally on steroids.
literally on steroids. But it takes a look at masculinity, and it takes a look at this bodybuilder whose only obsession and goal is to be in a magazine, to be at the cover of a magazine. He's willing to do anything to get there. And Jonathan May, oh my God, I don't even know how to describe him as an actor because he's so versatile. He, especially in this film, he gives you this, obviously, like his body, he's a bodybuilder, and just to see it on screen, and I'm just like just blown away by it. But he finds a way to show you a little bit of vulnerability. There's this softness to him that it's just mind-boggling to see what he does. If he's not going up there next year around this time, receiving an Oscar for that performance, I don't know. There's something wrong with the system. But that man, oh my God, it's just, he's incredible. He literally leaves me speechless as a performer. I mean, the guy's not that bad to look at either, but but no, as a performer, he's just on a whole different level, and it's just incredible. I feel, to be honest, lucky to be alive in the times of a Jonathan Majors.
Yeah, I mean, RB3, we talked a little bit about it before we saw, you saw Creed 3 before I did, but I agree with you 100%, Rosa, when I said that we both really did not like Quantumania, but
Okay.
I said that Jonathan Majors was awesome, and I found him to be so fascinating and interesting that it kind of made the film look worse because he just stands out so much more than any other performer in that movie, because he's the only one trying and doing something. But him in Creed 3, and you're the one who told me RB3, it just stuck with me even more, which is saying something, because I felt like he was great as King. But him as Damien, I was like, there's something about Damien, man, that I rewatched Creed 3 in IMAX, like you mentioned, RB3, and I caught it, right, because I was waiting for the IMAX expansion of the walkout songs and of the fights, because it's only for the fights, and there's 3 fights in the movie, so every time the screen expanded, I was like ready for it. Yeah. But still, Jonathan Majors is what stuck with me after that movie, man. There's something about Damien that I absolutely loved, his character inside that movie. I know, RB3, you had a lot of thoughts, and you've done like 3 podcasts about Jonathan Majors already, but what do you think now, hearing a little bit more about Magazine Dreams?
Well, I mean, that just gets me like super excited. I mean, for me personally, I mean, I'm just being biased. I would have given him an Oscar nomination for Creed 3. You know what I mean? For me personally, because he did something for me for Creed 3 that I've never seen an actor do, and that's get the South LA accent right. Like, there's never in a movie ever. You know, I'm from LA, you know, from Compton, born and raised. I never see that accent get nailed the way he nails it in Creed 3. And just the way he does it, he puts these little nuances in it. He has a little, like my like when I saw it the second time, my girlfriend was like, oh, like he even does this little stutter, like when you're angry. I'm like, you're right. Like, and that's literally something that only angry ghetto people do. Like when they're like super upset, they get like this little stutter, and he did it like so subtly, but it's like perfect. So I think like, and you're mentioning all these nuances with Magazine Dreams, how it's like, you know, I loved the Joker, you know, the movie. So you're telling me that, but with Jonathan Majors, again, I'm hyped. I think he's already the greatest. Like, you know, we did, like you said, we did one podcast on the channel where we talked about Jonathan Majors and with me and my boy John Marin, and we compared him. You know, I mean, you know, we don't want to. I hate saying like he's this generation's Denzel, but in our reality, he kind of is in the terms of like having that kind of insane amount of draw. I mean, I think the fact that Ant-Man and the Wasp, you know, he was bigger on the posters than Ant-Man than Paul Rudd was on a lot of these posters, right? Like he was the main selling point of that movie. I think in Creed 3, a lot of people are checking it out for Michael B. Jordan, of course, and for Creed, but also just out of curiosity to see what Jonathan Majors is doing. You know, we're not even talking about Lovecraft Country, which is that, you know, beloved show.
Yeah,
HBO.
We both saw that when it was coming out. RB3. Yeah.
Everybody loves, you know, everybody still talks about that show. Even people who didn't watch it live, people are going back and re-binging it, and people are loving Jonathan Majors in it. So I think he's really building up to that A-list star quality in a way that we don't really see in major actors these days. I mean, maybe like Florence Pugh, maybe, you know, like legacy actors, but in terms of new actors, we don't see that kind of level.
Can I just say, is it cheating that he came out to tiny spoilers, Rosa? Okay. Is it cheating that he came out to 2 Nipsey songs though? I was like, yo, that's kind of cheating though. You're like endearing yourself.
Well, that's where he's from. I mean, that's definitely, definitely makes it a little, he makes it a little more likable for sure. It makes him a little more likable.
Because in my second theater experience, when I saw it in IMAX, that I noticed people being like, oh crap. And then when he did it again, I was just like, am I gonna root for him just because of that?
Right.
Obviously not, but still. Shout out to Jonathan Majors. I'm excited to see what he does. Obviously looking forward to Magazine Dreams, and obviously looking forward to so many movies. I like what you said, Rosa, about March, because I'm probably the only one who's kind of interested in seeing 65. Because shout out to Adam Driver, Kylo Ren killing dinosaurs. I'm in it. But also John Wick. You mentioned Shazam. There's another movie end of March that I'm missing out on. But either way, there's so many movies coming out. Obviously, Guardians 3 is going to be massive, and I can't wait to see that movie. The trailer, I finally saw it for the first time recently, and it killed me right away. So I'm super pumped for it. I feel like this year, more than any other year, we can kind of finally look past the conversation about streaming versus theaters. And maybe that's me. Am I the only one thinking that? I just don't know if any streaming movies this year that is like, this is the one. Maybe we haven't heard about it yet, but anything streaming wise that you feel like, oh crap, this is going to destroy theaters and destroy everyone. No one?
I don't, not that I can think of.
Right? I feel like this year it's all straight to theater that I really think of, that it's going to really.
I think they learned their lesson. I think HBO learned their lesson with the day and date situation. I think they saw that they lost a lot of money out. I think if anything, the closest film last year that kind of like broke the theater mode with streaming was Glass Onion, right? The fact that it's like one weekend and made like 15 million, and I almost kind of convinced Netflix like, oh shoot, should we like re-release it again? You know? So I think if anything, we're going to see streamers start to transition more into theaters, because even Amazon's really behind Creed 3.
I was about to say that. Yeah.
So there's really a commitment to theatrical.
Yeah, I'm excited for it, because I've been one to always talk about the preservation of theaters. I think it's super important, which is why I think it's crazy that they're doing that seating thing. AMC, I don't know what they're thinking. I think it's absolutely bogus, especially when it comes to the types of theaters that they're currently in. If we're being honest, I know we're used to like that LA, style, but if you go anywhere else in the country, y'all, those theaters don't look like that. Like, they're kind of crappy, and now you want me to pay more.
Don't look like the Nicole Kidman commercial every time.
No, they don't. And it's already like you have to sit through 50 trailers just to get to the movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, what else am I supposed to do? It's the only theater in my city for most people in America, and they just have to do it. And it's just, I don't know. I hate monopolizing art, and that's already what's happening. But let's move on to the current state of movies, to a conversation that I really wanted to get your thoughts on. Rosa, number 3, you're free to jump in anytime you want to as well, which is, how do you feel about the current state of Latinos in movies? Because I feel like it's a conversation that I'm very passionate about. I've written a lot about, and I've talked a lot about, and I have a lot of thoughts about, but I don't usually have someone to go off of about, if that makes sense. So Rosa, I want to hear your thoughts about currently how you feel about Latinos in movies.
I'm very hopeful. I'm feeling optimistic. I feel that it's definitely going into the right direction, where we're heading into the right direction. And I'm very, very excited to see everything that's been going on. Yeah, you have a lot of Latinos, prevalent Latinos right now. I can name you Pedro Pascal, Oscar Isaac, Jenna Ortega, Aubrey Plaza. Probably 3-4 years ago, I would have only been able to name you Oscar Isaac and one somebody else, and that's it. So slowly but surely, I think we are heading into the right direction here. And I think that when I started doing Latinx Lens, I mean, just quick background, I just did it because I was taking a film course, and for a week 4 we were supposed to, it was a course about race, gender, and ethnicities or something like that in film and American film. So for week 4 we were going to learn about Latinos, Hispanics, Asian Americans, and Native Americans, just in 1 week. So I'm like, this makes no sense. 500-page textbook, only a page and a half on Latinos. So I'm like, no, there's no way there's only a page and a half on Latinos and their impact and contribution in film. So I started a podcast just to try, I guess, in a way, learn about Latinos on my own, but also have a platform to highlight their contributions and highlight what they've contributed, but also how we've been represented throughout the history of film. And I've learned a lot on my own, doing this on my own, because apparently film school didn't teach me much about Latinos. So it was interesting to dive into, starting from like Dolores del Rio, Anthony Quinn, and then moving on to the Rita Morenos, and see how it's progressed through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. The 90s, there was a little boost, like with Selena, and we had Blood In, Blood Out. We had all these, like the Edward James Olmos and such. But now I'm seeing that finally we are definitely getting more exposure. And I think a lot has to do with people not necessarily, I don't want to say taking Latinos seriously, because, and I know in a way they are, and they do respect our work. I mean, the most prevalent example I have is the Three Amigos, right? With Guillermo del Toro, Alfonso Cuarón, and Alejandro González Iñárritu, and everything they've done and they've accomplished and everything they've done in Hollywood, but also behind the camera, like with Emmanuel Lubezki as the cinematographer. And I think that, again, slowly but surely we are getting there. But with Latinx Lens, something that became very prevalent was how Hollywood looks down upon Latin American cinema, whether it's from Mexico or any other country, Central America or South America, and how they're not giving the same respect as, let's say, French cinema or something from Japan or Korea or anything like that. And that became something that it stood out to me a lot, and something that slowly I've been trying to prioritize. Like when I did Sundance in January, I try to prioritize the Latino films, Latino director, Latino centric. Not because I feel obligated to do so, but because that's what I genuinely want to do. I want to try to highlight those films, trying to highlight our stories pretty much, which of course not all Latinos, we're not a monolith or anything like that. But if we do go out of our way to watch these type of films and we talk about them and so on, hopefully somebody else can come around and watch the movie, and then they'll tell someone else, and then hopefully the word of mouth ends up going. So sorry, I know, long-winded answer, I'm so sorry. To answer your question, I think we are definitely headed into the right path, right way. And I can't wait, because I'm excited about Blue Beetle. To see a first ever Mexican-American superhero, man. And I mean, RB3, I'm from East LA. I'm a Chicana from East LA. So I'm just like, I'm excited for this and to see this representation and just to see again. Before, we wouldn't have had the Americas Chavez or the Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight, but now we do. And to tell you that I'm proud and I get emotional just knowing that my kids get to grow up seeing this type of representation. Oh man, it gives me chills.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot there, and there's a lot to look
I know.
forward to. No, not from what you said, but just in general, because if you're anywhere near Latino film Twitter, which is like microscopic, at least what I've seen, I don't think it's that big, but I feel the little I've seen from Latino film Twitter, it's such a crap storm, if I could sum it up in one way, because there's so many varying opinions when it comes to the type of representation you see. Like someone says, oh, if you speak Spanish, why they got to speak Spanish though? And someone else says, like, why didn't they speak Spanish though? Because it feels it's better representation. Like better representation, like it's just hard to summarize it and to make it one concise thing that all Latinos can agree on. So it's very difficult. But I do feel like there is a conflict that I personally, this is my personal opinion, that I think is currently facing with the Latino representation that we're currently seeing on film, coinciding with Latino representation that we see in daily life and in our own political American landscape, which is very much this idea of trying to water down and trying to, if I don't know the right word, but trying to samify, if that makes sense. Trying to make everything the same when it comes to Latino.
Assimilate,
assimilate, specifically with white identity and with this kind of, like, to be honest, white supremacist point of view, which I kind of despise. And I feel like it's so frustrating for me because I feel like Latinos is his own thing. And sometimes people forget. They're like, oh, that's that one brown guy. You know, his name is Ramirez, you know, Joseph Ramirez. And it's like, no, he has a whole history. He has a whole background. He has a whole family. It's different from yours. It's not the same. It's not just Joseph Ramirez. It's a whole different dude. And I feel like that's not explained well in movies, which is so different from like what we just saw with Creed 3, where you know there's a different cultural upbringing, or what we see from Crazy Rich Asians, or what we see from other films, Shang-Chi. Asian identity, the way it's represented is like, we're different, we're specific, whereas Latinos like, oh, we're just the same as everyone else, we're just like Joseph and Richard next door. And it's like, no, Latinos were our own thing. And it's like sometimes people forget, like, again, I've always gone back to the reporting that we saw beforehand, but it's like, we're such a massive box office percentage of demographics, and yet the type of representation we get is like so minuscule. Like we're maybe a side character in a film. So that's one thing that I definitely want to see more of. And I'm not criticizing what we see from Pedro or Oscar or all the people, or Jenna, another one. I think they're doing amazing, and I think it's awesome. I just want to see something a little deeper and something more, if that makes sense, because I do feel like if you're going to make a Latino actor play a significant role, and if he is a Latino actor, make him Latino, if that makes sense. Am I being too picky, Rosa?
No, I don't think you're being
Okay.
picky. But I do wonder, um, if we're talking about like the Latino American experience, because I think
Yeah.
that's where the Latin American cinema would come into play. Because we've had like, a lot of excellent like Guatemalan like with La Llorona, the reiteration of the Guatemalan
Yeah.
version of La Llorona.
It was
That
great.
was mind-boggling. And it was just I was blown away by that film. Sadly, horror bias, blah blah blah. A lot of people, the Oscar didn't eventually nominated, and I think that's where I'm trying to that's where I was trying to go with the Latin American cinema, because obviously those stories are going to be more specific. But I agree when it comes to Latinos who live here, who are in the United States. Yeah, our experience are different. My experience is completely different from somebody who lives in Mexico, and it certainly deserves to be given the necessary attention and so on and so forth. So no, I absolutely understand and I agree with your perspective.
Yeah, and I definitely want to see more. RB3, how are you feeling about it?
No, I mean, I definitely 100% hear, I hear both. I didn't want to interject earlier because y'all were talking so well, but I just also wanted to say too, Rosa, when you're talking about being in film school and learning about like, race and
Yeah.
like the underrepresentation, I think that plays into the problem that we're saying to begin with, right? Like how there's this erasure of diversity in early cinema. And that's for me, my personal experience as a Black film school graduate, like even I went through all 4 years of cinema media studies at USC and took mad race and gender classes, but I didn't learn more about Black cinema until after getting out of film school. And even I had Black professors too that were teaching these classes, but I still didn't learn a lot about these movies until I started doing independent research, started buying books like Regeneration, which is one that the Academy put out, which covers like 1890 to like 1971. A lot of people don't even know that Black cinema exists in between that time period. They think it just starts with Blaxploitation or whatever. And then, same thing with the 90s cinema, early 2000s. And, I'm glad you mentioned, the East LA cinema of the time of like, especially in the early 90s, 2000s, right? Because I think of movies like Real Women Have Curves, right? America Ferrera, right? And I think of it's the other one that they America and Me. I don't know. Yeah, that one's also good too. And then they have a more recent one, A Better Life, that was set in East LA too. That was came out with Damien Bichir. That was actually one, but see, that was the problem. That was the one like Hispanic, that was the one, Latinx film that they showed us in the film school class about race was A Better Life, And I was like, yeah, why is that the one that's chosen, right? The poverty stricken, like trying to get over, dealing with all that kind of stuff. Well, there's honestly a lot better and more fulfilling stories that, are a lot more wholesome, a lot more reflective of that real life. So I think, yeah, like y'all saying, like, it can't just be one image. It can't just be an image of like stereotypes. It can't just be an image of, for a lot of Black cinema, they labeled a lot of stuff, we did as comedy or, whatever, like Eddie Murphy, or, get put in the box. The point of the matter is you just can't be put in a box, and there has to be a diversity of stories that are being told, a range of stories being told by, the community that's, trying to tell them. So like, again, I think, like y'all are saying, like, we're definitely in a stronger renaissance now, and I'm, super happy to see where it goes going forward. But yeah, there definitely needs to be a lot more that can be done.
Yeah, I feel that way for sure. And I feel like we're definitely headed in that direction. And I just feel extremely, like almost excessively passionate about this topic. And maybe that's why I can get passionate about certain representations or certain archetypes that we see in cinema or in TV, I guess is another way to put it, when it comes to Latino representation, because I feel like it is important to specify who this person is,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Like why can't we get a Mexican or a Latino television show that's not like the George Lopez, it's not like a family comedy, you know what I mean? Like, what if we get something that's not like that? Like, I would love to see that personally.
Yeah, no, and I feel like we're headed there. I feel like we're definitely getting there, and I feel like there's definitely an opportunity to get there for sure. And there's a couple. I feel like there's a couple Latino led shows. There's Vida. I feel like that. I don't know. That was a show. I don't know if that's still going on. But even the ability to get representation in other forms of media, like a Wednesday, I think that's a good example of something that you can put in there, and it'll make sense and it'll flow well within the story, and it's still genre. So I mean, obviously Tenoch too, Tenoch in Conduit Forever. I think he that whole Mabel, everyone in that film just did a great job with the ability of what they're able to show. But I do want to be able to. Blue Beetle is a great example because Blue Beetle is so specified in what he is. And I feel like that's exciting because it's exciting to see that kind of love on film. Rosa, before you take off, do you have any other films that you enjoyed from Sundance?
Yes, there were several. Actually, for the first time, I mean, I've only been covering the festival like for 4 or 5 years, but for the first time, like my top 10, half of them were Latino led or directed movies, which was, I was like, yes, let's do it. But yeah, no, just to circle back, Magazine Dreams was obviously on my top 10. It's a performance. The film, I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't think it's the best film of the festival. But the Jonathan Majors performance, it's just unforgettable, and it sticks with you. I still think about it till this day, and I went to Sundance like almost 2 months ago. And I would personally have recognized his performance in The Last Black Man in San Francisco. That's when I was introduced to him, and just to see what he was able to do there, I was like, wow, this guy, there's something. But yeah, Magazine Dreams was one of them. Obviously, Radical, a Mexican film starring Eugenio Derbez as a professor in a border city of Tamaulipas. I believe it's Matamoros, if I'm not mistaken. And he's a professor who is newly hired to a school that is failing in academically. So it's kind of like, I first described it as a mashup between Stand and Deliver and Tigers Are Not Afraid, which came out a couple years ago. And it's a feel-good movie, but it's emotionally riveting. I was moved by it, and I absolutely loved it. There's a Puerto Rican film called La Pecera, or The Fishbowl. That one's directed by Glorimar Marrero Sanchez, and it just follows a 40-year-old woman who is re-diagnosed with cancer. And the movie is pretty much just she lives in one of the islands in Puerto Rico, an island that was previously used by the United States to dump toxic material. So now we're seeing what happens with a lot of people who still reside there, and sadly a environmental crisis that still hasn't been completely dealt with. And the movie, it's a character study of how she deals with this diagnosis and what she experiences. It's gorgeously shot and beautifully acted as well. Obviously, also a standout was Cassandro, the movie starring Gael Garcia Bernal as the wrestler, Saul Armendariz. That one, I was able to go to the premiere, and to see Gael in person, it was just like, oh man, unforgettable. But the film was just, I'm a big wrestling fan. I grew up watching the WWE, but also watching La AAA, Lucha Libre. And my father introduced me to it while my mother was introducing me to Macho Man and Hulk Hogan and all those people. And so to see this story, to see a Mexican wrestler who was openly gay at the time, in a sport that tends to be highly homophobic, but also in a culture like the Mexican one that isn't necessarily the friendliest one, was, man, it was intense. And Gael Garcia Bernal, I mean, he's Gael. He does no wrong. He's one of the best actors of our time. And just to see how he really dedicated himself to this character. He did a lot of his wrestling work. So everything you see in there, it's Gael wrestling and doing his thing. So yeah, those are some of the films I can think of. There's a documentary called The Eternal Memory, La Memoria Eterna, which is a Chilean film from the same director of the Oscar-nominated film The Mole Agent, or El Agente Topo, by Maite Alberdi. And this documentary follows a couple who the husband, he was a journalist, very well thought of journalist, who was an instrumental journalist when it comes to the dictatorship of Pinochet back in the, I believe, 70s or 80s. And he's been recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So we see how this couple navigates through his diagnosis and everything that he has to experience, but also how the wife has to eventually become his caretaker. And it gets pretty intense. I personally do not have anybody or know anyone who's had Alzheimer's, but the film does not shy away from showing the raw and all these emotionally heavy and quite intense moments between the couple. And it's something that Maite is, I'm noticing a trend from her, that she likes to highlight and recognize and acknowledge a demographic that tends to be forgotten a lot, which is our elders, our grandpas and our mothers and our fathers. And here she does an excellent job in this documentary.
That's amazing. No, because I feel like it's such a great opportunity to go to Sundance and to experience these kind of, especially the international films that probably won't get too much attention stateside. So I think that's such a great opportunity to be able to do that. Hopefully one of these days I'll be able to go to Sundance and check it out for myself. I think that's super exciting. Obviously the Gael one, I remember watching him in real life. I forgot his name. What was his name again? The wrestler?
Saul or
Saul.
Cassandra, yeah.
And I remember him. Yeah, I just remember it. It's just so stuck in my head. When I was a little kid watching that, I grew up with wrestling as well, with WWE. I think WrestleMania 17 was the first one I saw, which was like 98, I think. But yeah, I definitely remember Mexican wrestling as well, Lucha Libre. I think I'm excited for that movie. I think that's definitely exciting for sure. And I think there's a lot there to look forward to. Also, the Eugenio Derbez one, I heard about that one as well. It's interesting because I grew up in McAllen and Reynosa, so I'm super familiar with Matamoros. And obviously, Matamoros is in the news now for awful news. So it's I grew up border town, USA, one foot in the US, one foot in Mexico, because my dad worked in Mexico pretty much my whole life. So we lived in America while he worked in Mexico, which was definitely a crazy experience. So I'm so curious to see that film, especially if it is an uplifting film, and especially because my parents love Eugenio Derbez, like love him. Like they were the first ones going crazy for Coda when Coda won, and everyone was like, Coda sucks, and my parents were like, Coda. It was definitely them supporting Eugenio. So shout out to Eugenio. Hopefully he keeps doing his thing, because I feel like he's always been trying for so long to really just do something significant, right? So Rosa, thank you so much for doing this. I greatly appreciate your time. This was such a fun conversation. I know we hit on a lot of different topics, but every single one of them, I feel like you knocked it out of the park. So I greatly appreciate it. Where can everyone find you?
Yes, no, thank you so much for the invite. This was fun. Thank you. Yeah, I'm on social media, Letterboxd, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Rosa's Reviews. And a lot of my work can be found at latinxlens.com and also at the dailychela.com, where I've been doing a lot of my Sundance reviews and just newly released films as well.
Awesome. Rosa, thank you so much for being here. RB3, where can everyone find you, man?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Director RB3.
You can follow me at Squad Leader Race. You can follow us at First Cut TMO. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already. We also have a TikTok, so make sure you guys follow us on TikTok at First Cut TMO. We're going to be there posting videos there as well. But either way, guys, for the First Cut crew, we're going to be peacing out. So deuces. Peace.
It's either me or you. It's either me or you.